All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're cutting straight through the relentless hype of 2026 to take a hard, data-backed look at the reality of enterprise AI adoption. Now, if you've been paying attention at all, you know AI isn't just some fringe experiment anymore. It has completely engulfed the corporate world. But as the dust finally settles on the absolute frenzy of the past couple of years, a really fascinating and honestly somewhat alarming picture is starting to emerge. So today we're going to unpack the most vital benchmarks of the year. We'll show you not just who is spending what, but who is actually winning, who is losing, and most importantly, why. Let's start with a staggering number. According to Gartner, worldwide AI spending is hitting an absolutely massive $2.59 trillion this year alone. Let that sink in for a second. To put that into perspective, that's roughly 41% of all IT spending globally. It's an increase of nearly $1 trillion compared to just last year. We are witnessing an unprecedented reallocation of corporate capital right before our eyes. But the real question we have to ask ourselves is, where is all this money actually going, and is it doing what it's supposed to do?
Section 1, the trillion-dollar baseline. Right now, a whopping 88% of organizations regularly use AI in at least one business function. This data comes straight from McKinsey's latest State of AI survey, and it basically means adoption is universal across the modern enterprise. If you're in business today, you're interacting with AI. But what's absolutely crucial to note here is that while 88% are using it, nearly two-thirds of these companies haven't even begun scaling it across their broader enterprise. They've got their foot in the door, sure, but they haven't walked fully into the room yet.
And this adoption is backed by incredible financial momentum. Enterprise spend on generative AI specifically vaulted from $11.5 billion in 2024 to $37 billion in 2025. That is a 3.2 times increase in just a single year. According to Menlo Ventures, this makes generative AI the fastest scaling software category in history. The market is just pouring fuel onto this fire at a rate we have literally never seen before in the tech sector. Section 2, the Great ROI Divide. Okay, so here is where we hit a massive speed bump, and it's a whiplash-inducing reality. Despite those trillions being spent, MIT researchers at Project Nanda found that a whopping 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots completely fail to deliver a measurable impact on the profit and loss statement. Think about that for a second. Only 5% of these projects are actually creating measurable financial value. For the vast majority of companies out there, the incredible cutting-edge technology they're paying top dollar for is just not translating into bottom-line business results. However, there is a tiny, tiny fraction of the market, about 6% of organizations, according to McKinsey, who are actually capturing real financial value. We call this the 6% rule. These AI high performers are rapidly pulling ahead of the pack, attributing more than 5% of their earnings before interest and taxes, basically their core operating profit, directly to AI. They aren't just playing around with cool experiments. They are extracting tangible, undeniable profit from their AI initiatives, while everyone else is just kind of spinning their wheels. So how do you join that elite 6% club? Well, the data points to a very specific playbook. It turns out their success isn't really about having a somehow better AI model. It's all about their approach. Step 1, they succeed by purchasing specialized tools, rather than trying to build everything in-house. In fact, internal builds succeed only a third as often. Step 2, they're 2.8 times more likely to fundamentally redesign their workflows around AI, instead of just awkwardly slapping it onto old, outdated processes. And crucially, Step 3, they implement strict human-in-the-loop validation processes to catch inevitable errors. Section 3, the paradox of AI costs. This is probably the most fascinating contradiction we're seeing in 2026. On one side of the equation, the cost to actually run these large language models, the inference price, is collapsing at unprecedented rates. Epoch AI reports per-token prices falling anywhere from 50 to 200 times per year. Compute is getting incredibly cheap. But simultaneously, almost 80% of enterprises are bleeding cash through massive cost overruns. So how can the core ingredient be getting drastically cheaper while the final bill just absolutely explodes? Well, you'd think companies with highly mature financial operations would have this totally under control, right? Wrong. Organizations that rate themselves very mature in their financial operations actually experience worse cost overruns. We're talking an 89% failure rate with a massive 31% overspend. Why? Because AI isn't like predictable seat-based software.
The sheer complexity of hidden data platform costs, constantly running agent workloads, and unpredictable usage-based pricing makes AI the absolute hardest line item in the IT budget to forecast, even for the experts.
Section 4. The Developer's Dilemma. Let's think about the folks actually building all this stuff. An overwhelming 84% of software developers now use or plan to use AI tools, according to Stack Overflow's massive global survey. In fact, just over half of them use these tools every single day. Enterprise spend on AI coding tools has skyrocketed from $550 million to $4 billion in just 1 year. It is now the largest departmental AI category by a mile. But despite that massive adoption and those billions of dollars spent, developers are deeply frustrated. 2/3 of them cite this exact issue as their biggest headache: AI solutions that are almost right, but not quite. Nearly half of all developers report that debugging confidently incorrect AI-generated code is actually more time-consuming than just writing it themselves from scratch. The productivity gains are there, for sure, but they are coming with a very hefty tax on developers' sanity. Because of this, we are seeing a massive trust deficit in 2026. A startling 46% of developers actively distrust the accuracy of AI outputs, while only 33% actually trust it. Positive sentiment is genuinely falling. When they don't trust an answer, over 75% of developers are relying heavily on their human peers to verify the AI's work. It turns out that when precision really matters, the human element is still heavily in demand to police the machine. And this intense frustration over accuracy, it's causing a massive shift in vendor allegiances. Developers are desperately searching for better, more reliable reasoning capabilities, which is why Anthropic now dominates an incredible 54% of the enterprise coding market share, leaving OpenAI trailing at 21%. When developers need code that actually compiles and functions correctly without hallucinating, the data shows they are voting with their wallets and migrating straight toward models that offer higher fidelity. Section 5. The Future. Agentic AI. So where is this all heading? The industry is pivoting, and pivoting violently toward agentic AI. We are rapidly moving past simple back-and-forth chatbots into highly sophisticated systems that can independently plan, execute complex, multi-step tasks, and adapt their behavior on the fly. This isn't just about drafting a quick email anymore. It's about deploying a digital worker that can independently audit a financial report or manage a complex supply chain disruption all on its own. The projected growth here is just breathtaking. By the end of this year, Gartner projects that 40% of all enterprise applications will feature task-specific AI agents. To put that in context, that number was less than 5% just at the start of the year. The spending on AI agent software alone is expected to jump 82% to nearly $380 billion by 2027. The momentum behind agents is absolute. But let's take a step back. Given that organizations are still heavily struggling with basic ROI, massive cost overruns, and plummeting developer trust, we have to ask a really tough question. Gartner predicts that over 40% of these new agentic AI projects are destined for cancellation by 2027. So as the entire market rushes blindly toward agents, you really have to ask yourself, are you following the playbook of the 6% that actually succeeds and captures value, or are you joining the 40% heading straight for a very expensive cancellation?